Welcome to Zoo Nation, where we talk about and observe the political zoo around us. Beginning with the article from Enerdata, because of the fact of the high gas prices, this episode is going to be about energy policy in the US, contrasting Biden and Trump, but also looking at the best path forward when it comes to the economy generally speaking, and also looking at food chain issues, supply chain issues, and possibilities of a famine. We'll see. So far, the president has not had a dream about 7 fat cows or 7 skinny cows or anything like that. But then again, it would take a whole lot to surprise me. So we'll go ahead and jump into this. Article from CNBC.com. Russia is weaponizing food supplies to blackmail the world. Russia airstrikes have hit a freight railcar repairing factory in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv, so not Kiev. So I'm just going to say Kiev. It's not right. I mean, I've always seen it pronounced Kiev, but that's such a, anyway. Kyiv on the weekend, potentially exacerbating a food shortage crisis. It came after Russian President Vladimir Putin promised to facilitate the export of grain a week earlier. The CEO of state-owned Ukrainian Railways said Russia was wrong to attack the factory, which only repaired rail cars for grain and iron ore transportation. And I'm not going to read the entire thing, but basically, some analysts agree with comments made by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken that Russian President Vladimir Putin was blackmailing the world by holding food supplies hostage as part of his war strategy to end sanctions. But others said the West, and looking to hold Putin accountable for Ukraine, has overreached by blaming Putin for everything. And to be quite honest, I think that those two viewpoints, as far as some people are saying that Putin's using this to blackmail the world, and others are saying, well, we're kind of blaming Putin for everything, are very fair. And all kinds of stuff. So, like, do I think that the invasion of Ukraine is potential for World War III? I mean, anything could happen, but let's have cooler heads prevail. I doubt it. And with a lot of prayer and with a lot of working hard philanthropically and supporting the good side, there can be peace. And so another article on, this is Rochester.edu. Expect another year of supply chain issues. Rochester economist George Alessandria explains what is causing the shortages and why government intervention would be counterproductive. Well, we might have someone with some sense speak on this. In the summer of 2021, University of Rochester economist George Alessandria wanted to buy his 12-year-old son a bicycle. They went to a store, then another and another and another, only to find a limited inventory of bikes. Sure, they could order the bike they wanted as long as they were willing to wait a year. What they did find was an unlimited supply of unicycles. I'm sorry, I'm kidding. Everyone knows that clowns ride unicycles. Alessandria's experience is not unusual. Consumers in the United States and elsewhere have been having a difficult time buying lumber, potatoes, cream cheese. How dare you run out of potatoes and cream cheese? So that the world should be rioting for that. Lumber, potatoes, cream cheese, paper products, and cars. So what's more important? Like driving a car to work, building a house with lumber, or, I mean, depending on the country, I can understand potatoes being a problem, but cream cheese, you know, gotta keep that up there. So, yeah, gotta have your bagels and gotta have your baked potatoes and your tater tots, you know. As Alessandria points out, there were spikes in consumer demand for certain items at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Then, once restrictions began easing, demand increased for other products, which put stresses on the global supply chains, and he says relief won't come quickly. Alessandria, an expert in international trade, explains how global supply chain issues continue to reverberate through the American and global economies. And to be honest, I don't disagree with what's been said here. I think that that was a big factor, because you got to think. In fact, we're going to come to the energy policy soon. When it comes to the price of oil per barrel, 2020 was the best year, unsurprisingly, because what happened in 2020? People started staying home. There are some people that stay home no matter what. They got mobility issues or what have you. But there's plenty of people that didn't want to leave the house, were afraid to leave the house for good reason, and didn't leave, and so didn't drive. And as a result, if you're not going out and getting gas very much because you're not driving very much, then these oil and fuel companies are like, well, we don't need a whole lot. And then Saudi Arabia or whoever else, although at that point it was actually American oil production more and more, but there was some importation of oil. And we were energy independent in a sense, but there was still some trading because the price of barrel per oil is a stat. And so we were getting oil from somebody, probably from a mixture of people, Israel and Russia, because we were a net exporter. So that said, when it comes to the price of oil per barrel was very, very inexpensive. And I have stats on that I'm going to put in the comments section, but also in the description. And by the way, everything I'm going to talk about here is going to be in the description of this video and in the comment section. But keep in mind that, of course, it makes sense that the price of oil will be very cheap that year. But then in 2021, what happened? And really toward the end of 2020, arguably, that starts to change. DeSantis opens up Florida, McMaster follows his lead and opens up South Carolina. Noem opens up or keeps open South Dakota. They never really 100% closed down from what I've seen and heard. She was pretty courageous as far as that goes, and so was DeSantis. But the thing is, when you've got something that is very cheap and then demand goes way up, of course the price is going to go up. Some of this is just basic supply and demand questions. So another thing to keep in mind regarding energy, we've got another article. I want to contrast Trump and Biden. This is from trumpwhitehouse.archives.gov. This is under energy and environment. America's energy revolution under President Trump produced affordable, reliable energy for customers along with stable, high-paying jobs for small businesses, all while dropping U.S. carbon emissions to their lowest level in 25 years. The Trump administration led the United States to become the #1 producer of oil in the world while maintaining American position as the #1 natural gas producer. The year 2019 marked the first time in 67 years that American annual gross energy exports exceeded gross energy imports. 67 years. To safeguard the environment, President Trump withdrew from Paris Climate Accords, after which the United States reduced carbon emissions more than any country in the agreement. Under President Trump, the United States continued to lead the world in greenhouse gas emission reductions, cutting energy-related CO2 emissions by 12% from 2005 to 2018. I gotta say, I imagine him meeting with them and everyone's like, so you're doing this? And Trump's like, yes, we're getting out of it. We're getting out of the Paris Climate Accord. You know, the Climate Accord has been a disaster for our country. And then I say, well, what are you gonna do? Are we gonna start polluting like crazy? He says, no, we're gonna show we don't need that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna get CO2 down. Anyway, we're going to continue to use the filters and we're going to talk to Elon Musk and we're going to get carbon emissions in America down because we're going to take care of our beautiful atmosphere. And so we're going to continue to work on the environment. It's going to be the best environment. People tell me all the time, President Trump, we think you're doing an unbelievable, terrific job. And if you do things like this, if you encourage less pollution and decreasing of CO2, then it's going to be like unlike anything anyone's ever seen. I mean, people are going to be remembering years from now the best times under President Trump, the best atmosphere in the whole entire human history was when Donald Trump was president. And so I can imagine him having a meeting like that. It's pretty hysterical to think about. AAA. Gas prices across the country right now, $4.08 average. Now it was in certain areas around $7.80 or $8 almost, right under $8 is the highest that I've seen in California, and also in some extreme cases in the Northeast. But this is an average in California. There are sections, I'm sure, higher than that, and there's probably some sections that are a little lower than that. It's an average, but it is, whenever you would look at the graph that you'll see in AAA, you'll see it under gasprices.aaa.com, that California and Maine and Illinois are the main ones that are really, really bad off. Really all the left coast. You've got Oregon, you've got Washington, and you've got Idaho, and which isn't really on the left coast, but anyway, that general area. So it depends. What policy do you want? And I'm not going to get to the inner data right now, but What policy do you want? Ask yourself that. Crony capitalist is a misnomer. It's not a right term. Corporatist is the correct term. Big corporation, big government in the economy, big intervention. It's really a mixture of socialism and capitalism, but I personally just think it's socialism light because I think it's the most accurate term for it. But you gotta ask yourself, do you want a situation with the economy where everything's heavily Keynesian, which is what we've had for a long time under Bush, under Obama with the bailouts, but also under Trump signing a $2.2 trillion bill in April of 2020. 2.2 trillion signed by President Trump, a Republican. Do you want things like that, like Bush and like Obama, or do you want more of a free market approach where if a company is having a difficult time and going under, where you have a better business, overtake it and outcompetes it? I mean, the fact of the matter is that's just how it's always been throughout human history, unless the government puts its hand in it and says, well, no, you are an important business to people and we're gonna prop you up and uphold you. Which begs the question, at what point, how big does a business need to be? Because here's the thing, when you look at things like the $2.2 trillion bill, who did not get it? The small business owner. But see, where do you draw the line between small and large business? Gets tricky and tough. I want to say, I forget the exact number, it had to do with, I think it was a couple of hundred of employees. And those, there were certain grants you could get, but it did not come out of the bill. The bill did expand certain grants that you could apply for, but that was not part of the money, in that $2.2 trillion bill. So ask yourself, do you want a situation where everything is fair, where small businesses are not given a big handout, or big businesses aren't given the advantage over the small businesses? Or do you want everything involved in the economy to be up to a vote, or really up to a politician's vote, but by connection for the general public democratically to decide whether we take more money from the rich or take more money from you, shift taxes to the middle class and small business owners, or what? Or do you want as much of a hands-off approach? And here's the thing. One thing people don't talk about, except for people like in the Libertarian Party and the Austrian School of Economics, you've basically got the Chicagoan School of Economics, which is much more consequentialist about capitalism being the best thing as far as it leads to the best outcomes, and they want not much government but some. And you've got the Austrian school, which is very, very, very hands-off when it comes to government, and they tend to be more about the logic of it, the private property rights, but also they understand and get it that it also leads to the best outcomes, and they have empirical data to back it up. I mean, when you look at it, China and India are more free market than they were and are experiencing amazing, incredible economic growth, especially since the death of Mao Zedong. And so, in the case of China, I should say. But when it comes to that, you got to consider what kind of an economy you want, and do you want things to be fair in the sense that you're not having government getting an advantage over small businesses and helping the big businesses because the politicians are being bought off. That is a factor. There are politicians being bought off, or at least they're having their ads run by corporations and by unions and things like that. What the solution to that is, I don't know without getting more government involved. But real quick, if you want businesses to stay in the United States, if you want the economy to just expand and explode like nothing you've ever seen, then get rid of the corporate tax. Because here's the thing, businesses in China have to pay something, right? Maybe not much, but something. How is China going to compete with a 0% corporate tax in America? They can't. Don't slap tariffs on. I need to make a video on its own about the stupidity, the economic illiteracy and impotency and stupidity of a tariff, which basically is forcing, if you're the US government, forcing US citizens, your own citizens, if we're gonna have such thing as governments and states and everything like that, your own citizens, making them pay a higher price because of the Buy American, Hire American. If you wanna buy American, incentivize American businesses to stay by not taxing them as highly. And now look, 0 might be too extreme for some of the people out there, but that is a good place that's a good thing to think about and get it as low as possible. Get it lower, rather than, we raise you this tariff this high, we raise you this tariff this high in America and China. Have competing differences with lowering of the corporate tax. But you don't hear that talked about. That even though that is a huge solution, people don't want to, because that means less money going to the government, and they've got to get their raises somehow. So great job, Congress. And also great job, America, for electing a Congress that is so selfish and cares so little about this country. But look at Interdata Publications, A New Dawn for U.S. Energy Policy. It's going to be in the comments section. And we will catch you in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Zoo Nation.